What we have here is what is apparently a book review by The Atlantic, and the best way to describe The Atlantic is the propaganda wing of leftist viewpoints that spews such ideological trash that would make the New York Times blush. And this right here is supposedly a book review of Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life. I can't wait to get my copy. I had it pre-ordered for a long time. It is supposed to be here shortly, and I anticipate thoroughly enjoying it, thoroughly reading it through a few times, just like I had its predecessor, 12 Rules for Life, Antidote to Chaos. And Dr. Peterson has evoked the ire of several outlets, but as far as I can see, this is the first time that The Atlantic has taken a metaphorical stab at doing their best hatchet job that they could possibly muster. Because remember, this is supposedly a book review. What happened to Jordan Peterson? I was going to add the doctor just out of sheer habit. Adorned guru and reviled provocateur, author, dropped out of sight. Now, the irresistible ordeal of modern cultural celebrity has brought him back. Something that Helen Lewis strives for, could not achieve, and would have to settle for being a meager scribe for The Atlantic. I've glanced over this article. It is long. It is obnoxious. It is worth your time to peer into the warped sensibility of your modern-day journalist. And we'll parse through a few parts, but as you'll notice, this is still, like I said, a book review. There are very few quotes from that book, or very few allusions that this is anything more than just a reframing of reality. Let's begin. One day in early 2020, Jordan B. Peterson rose from the dead. Odd. If you were paying attention to anything at the time in late 2019, you knew that he checked himself into rehab, so to say he rose from the dead is a bit of a provocative way to begin your book review. The Canadian academic, then 57, had been placed on a 9-day coma by doctors in a Russian clinic after being addicted to benzodiazepines, a class of drug that includes Xanax and Valium. I already see what they're trying to do. They're trying to undermine his credibility by exploiting a drug addiction, which, if he was a part of somebody on their side, they would promote as some sort of a virtue. I will not hold this against him. Of course not. That would be foolish. If you were to take the example, or if you were to take the advice from somebody who is absolutely perfect, you can search this land far and wide throughout all of history, and you will come up empty. So I shan't seek perfection in those I take advice from. The coma kept him unconscious as his body went through the terrible effects of withdrawal. He awoke, strapped to the bed, having tried to rip out the catheters in his arm and leave the intensive care unit. We'll skip ahead a little bit because I still don't even see the title of the book that is supposedly being reviewed until the third paragraph. Peterson has now returned to a public sphere and the psyche-splitting ordeal of modern celebrity with the new book, Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life. So what, was he supposed to come back after that harrowing ordeal and start at ground zero? Or did you guys think that you successfully vanquished a foe and are trying to undermine him now that you have a place that you believe that you can stick your heels in and hold the line over? I see what you're doing. An intriguing title in the light of recent experiences. There it is. The mystery deepens. What really happens to Jordan Peterson and why he came back for more. Goes into his history, Fairview, Alberta, which is about an hour if you're doing significantly over the speed limit. Don't judge me too harshly. About an hour and a half north of where I'm at, and intimately familiar with the area. And we also went to the same college, which is kind of interesting, and one of the reasons why I feel such a strong kinship, if I may, because he sounds like, and I'm sure you guys also have experienced this as well whenever he speaks, it is in a language that is direct. Some of the words might be unnecessarily elaborative, but the message itself always comes across like advice from a father or from an uncle, somebody who is trusting that you would come across from, or at a place where you would just meet up and talk amongst people to discuss the trying concepts of the day. Go over the news of the day. That's one of the reasons why I think his message resonates so vastly and profoundly. And as you can see, yes, we continue to go down the biography, and I shan't bore you with the retelling that everybody very much knows at this point. Paints him as a transphobe for going against the horror that was Bill C-16 up here in Canada, which became law in 2017, was a paradigmatic culture war battle. Each side overstated the other's argument to bolster its own. I'm sure she was very intensely tuned to the parliamentary debate when C-16 was put in front of the House of Commons, obviously. Either you hated transgender people or you hated free speech. No, that's just an insight into your mind that you think that everything is a black and white decision, but that's just my observation. I don't waste my life writing for such rags. In Peterson's view, the bill exposed the larger agenda of postmodernism. This is why she hates Peterson, which he portrayed as an ideology that, in denying the existence of objective truth, leaves the practitioners without an ethic. I think that's a fairly fair observation and description of postmodernism. This is not how theorists of postmodernism define it, and if you have a few hours to spare, do ask one of them to explain. Educate yourself. I would rather not. I would rather eat glass than talk to a postmodernist professor. He was on the side of science and rationality, he proclaimed. That's terrible writing. You should be using his first name, and then after you've established who you're talking about, then you can start using pronouns, but here I am. And how dare you infer his pronouns? They may have changed over the previous years when he was in isolation. Come on now. And against identity politics, as any sane individual should be. Feminists were wrong to argue that traditional gender roles were limiting and outdated because centuries of evolution had turned men into strong, able providers and women into warm, emotionally sensitive nurturers. That is the most blatant case of putting words into somebody's mouth. And if you believe that the current state of modern feminism believes that evolution has galvanized traditional gender roles, I have a bridge in New York that is for sale if you are interested, because they are the ones that are all about tearing down the traditional values, the hierarchy of ideas that have led us to this point. But you can see this is not anything about being logical, fair, even doing actual reporting. But remember, this is also supposed to be a book review. People who hold that our culture is an oppressive patriarchy don't want to admit that the current hierarchy might be predicated on competence, is how he later phrased it. This was during Donald Trump's presidency. See, TDS reigned strong in these people. The founding stories of the world's great religions backed him up, as did the hero's journey. It is men who fight monsters while women are temptresses or helpmates. Disingenuous representation. That is the same thing that held all of those feminist reviewers up with the first book, with Antidote to Chaos. There was a comparison to be made that order is a male trait and chaos is a female trait. Rather, they would be described as you have male and female descriptors in English, in Spanish, in many other languages throughout the world. And some thick-skulled people out there believe that, because this is an antidote to chaos, that means that you hate women. That's the example that many hack scribe is used, and that is the continuation of this here. We'll continue along. Now just showing her jealousy of what Dr. Peterson has accomplished, yet the relentless demands of modern celebrity, more content, more access, more authenticity, what she values, were already tearing at the psychologist's public persona in two. One, Peterson was a father figure beloved by the normie readers of 12 Rules. Oh, she can start throwing in her slander a little bit further into her article, I understand. Who stood in long lines to hear him speak and left touching messages from internet forums testifying that he had turned their lives around. She believes that that is not the case because he is spewing hate facts. The other Peterson was a fearsome debater, the gladiator who crowned gotcha at the British television interviewer Kathy Newman. So what you're saying is about the gender pay gap and the freedom to give offense. What, the debunked gender pay gap and sometimes speaking the truth is a hard pill to swallow? His debates were clipped and remixed and posted all over YouTube. Oh, I'm sorry, nobody else does that to your work. Them be the breaks. With titles announcing that he had destroyed his interlocutors. Well, did Peterson make any of those clips? Why are you trying to slander him with what his fans do? That's weird. I'm sure people could do the same, but I don't think anybody's a Helenite. I know this because I was one of them. Our interview for British GQ. Ugh. If you haven't seen that, I think your algorithm is probably a little bit askew at the moment because that interview has been recommended to me in the past month or so at least 50% of the time. than the top 5 results on a YouTube video. There's a yellow background. It's the two of them facing off at opposing chairs. You know the one I mean. Which had garnered more than 23 million views, is easily the most viral moment I've ever had. That's why I've been calling her out every time that she attacks Peterson for being a public figure, because it's all about her. Notice how we still haven't gotten into the book at any point? Well, dozens of acquaintances emailed and texted me to praise my performance and compare Peterson's stern effect to Hannibal Lecter with a PhD. Remember, she's the victim. Mean comments piled up like a snowdrift before the video itself. I was biased and utterly intellectually bankrupt, dishonest and malicious, and like a petulant child who walked into an adult conversation. No lies detected. What kind of man, several wondered, would marry a dumb, whiny, shrill feminist like this? Quite a subservient beta. Oh, I'm sorry, quite a nice one. Thanks for asking. I don't need to be hearing anything more about how she's a victim. Let's get to the actual substance of her review. You have to go all the way to the 6th last paragraph in this review. And I don't know if you can see, but I'll just go ahead and run this down. This is how far down the article you have to go, okay? And then we'll just go down for posterity's sake. You have to go down this far before you even get to anything resembling a book review. I can't believe the Atlantic would publish this if I didn't have such a extensive background with their work, unfortunately. On the rare occasion that Beyond Order strays overtly into politics, Peterson still can't resist fighting straw men. Oh, really? What Peterson sees as a healthy ambition needs to be encouraged in every possible manner. He writes, it is for this reason, among many others, that the increasingly reflexive identification of striving of boys and men for victory with the patriarchal tyranny that hypothetically characterizes our modern, productive, and comparatively free societies is so stunningly counterproductive, and, it must be said, cruel, that is almost nothing worse than treating someone striving for competence as a tyrant in training. I would love to see how she justifies that as being a straw man, because that seems like a good path that you could send a young boy on. And to be fair, any young individual, any 20-something, any 30-something, any middle-aged person, you should always be striving for competence. There's nothing else that you should be striving for. This will be the last thing that we read from this, except for the conclusion, just showing you that this is in fact not a book review. It's just a Dear Diary post. But who is reflexively identifying all male ambition as innately harmful? Oh, I don't know, just read an Atlantic article. Turn on your television. Listen to a teacher at one of your precious institutions that spew all of their hateful bile. Go on YouTube, where all they promote is the feminization of men and not strong, powerful men. But I'll allow her to straw man the straw man because I heard you like straw man, so we put a straw man in your straw man. If any mainstream feminist writers are in fact arguing that the West is a patriarchal tyranny, you have for the past half a decade at least, as opposed to simply a patriarchy or a male-dominated society, he should do the reader a favor of citing them. Is he arguing with Gloria Steinem or Princess Sparklehorse 99 on Tumblr? She gets paid to write this. A tenured professor should embrace academic rigor. You know what would also be a fair analysis of the book? Posting more than one clip out of one paragraph in one chapter. I would say if you're accusing somebody else of cherry-picking an argument, you shouldn't be guilty of it yourself. Yet Peterson's elevation to guru status has come at a great personal cost, a cascade of suffering you wouldn't wish on anybody. It made him rich and famous. Really? Suffering in Russia for the better part of a year made him rich and famous? But not happy. We compete for attention personally, socially, and economically, he writes in Beyond Order. No currency has a value that exceeds it, but attention is a perilous drug. The more we receive, the more we desire. It is a culture war's greatest reward. Yet, it started Jordan Peterson on a journey that turned a respected but unknown professor into a man strapped into a Russian hospital bed, ripping the tubes from his arms, desperate for another fix. Hateful, spiteful, and intellectually bankrupt. This is one of the greatest examples of projection I have read in a very long time, and I read multiple articles a day from a multitude of different sources. If this is what passes as a book review in 2021, I'm oddly happy because I will have plenty of ammunition and plenty of good fodder for the future. because the paragraph that we read about, oh, this was my most viral moment, oh, I had plenty of text messages, you could practically hear the excitement in her voice because this lady is striving for clicks. A book review is not about you. It's about your opinions on the subject. You could not like the book. You could think that it's poorly written, but at least give us more than one example. Give us more than just a few sentences from one paragraph. This is disgusting. She's a hateful person who will never achieve any sort of notoriety unless she stands up straight with her shoulders back, and you know what? Maybe a little house cleaning would do you good. With that said, I thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.